Hi loves, it's your girl StyledByMMA. Welcome back to my channel. I'll be showing you how I made this 3-layered shared dress. From cutting the layer to building that perfect shared bodice. I'll be walking you through each step so you can sew along with me. It is beginner friendly, easy to follow and super cute for any occasion. Let's get right into this video. But first of all, do wait to subscribe to my channel and follow me for more video like this. And I'll see you guys on the tutorial. In making of this shared dress, you'll be needing 3 to 4 yards. Mine I'm using 4 yards of fabric, and this is folded in 2 places because I'll be cutting both the front and the back together. So I went in to mark my hip measurement and I add extra 5 inches. So this is for the front part of the top, okay? So whatever I have, I'm going to still place it on the down part. Why do I use my hip measurements? My hip measurement and my bust measurement is literally the same thing, just different is just half inch. So you can use your bust measurement and add extra 5 inch. I went ahead to cut the excess, and from there I'm going to mark 1 inch for folding allowance, and the actual length that I'm going to start with is 8 inches. So I'll also go ahead to connect those lines together. So I advise you do the same. This is quite easy tutorial to follow. The next thing that we're going to do is to take the actual measurement. For me, I'll be using 24 inches for the length of the top part. Why? Because this is going to be sitting on the down of my waist. So I notch that area and open up the fabric in 2 places. So this is how I'm going to fold. I'm going to fold with half inch and further fold again with half inch. This is for the front part of the top, and I'm going to go in to sew with a stretch stitch. I'll pin this down and go sew with a stretch stitch. I'll do this for both the front part of the top and also for the back part of the top, and I'll show you guys what I have after I was done. So this is what I have after I was done stitching that part. So the next thing I'm going to do is to create the shade line. Mind you, if you're sewing for the shades, where you need to place your marking is always on the front part. So because I don't want to have a lot of chalk on that front area, that's why I'm marking it by the tip part. So I'll be shredding in half inches. So that's why I'm marking half inches on that edge. So I'll just follow this half inch. I'm going to mark this like straight till I get to the end part of the top, and I'll do this on the other side of the top. Like I said, you are going to shred this on the front part. We're going to be sewing on that front part, so I don't want too much chalk there. But if you're not very good in creating a straight line, I would advise you mark this chalk straight down. But if you are good, you can follow along to do like I'm doing. Mark the length that you wanted your shred to be and mark like you see me doing. Okay, so I'm going to mark this on both the front and the back of my top, and I'll show you guys the next step that we'll need to follow. And this is what I have. I'll be sewing along this line. So I'm going to place my elastic thread on the wheel, and I'll be using my hand. And mind you, you will not stretch this. You just have to reel it like normally. Don't try to, drag the elastic. And that's just it. You get to the end part of the elastic. Afterwards, you just have to place this on your bobbin, and how you're going to do it is to place this like you see me demonstrating. You don't need to force it in. You could use a pin to open that part up and place your elastic inside gently, and also fix it on your machine. That is all I could say, but if you could watch the way I did this is quite easy. And the next thing you have to do is to reduce the tension of your sewing machine. so it will go freely while sewing a smoky dress. So as you can see, I'm following along with that straight line that I created. So I'm working with half inch. So I'll be sewing in half inch till I get to the end part of the top. So I'm trying to show you guys where the markings are. So what I'm going to do is to raise this up like you see me doing and push that to the other half part and continue with the stitching. So I'm just going to follow along with that half inch. So mind you, when sewing this smoky dress, it might not be forming smoky at the first sew, but the more you get further with the sewing, the more smoky it falls. So just take your time in doing this. Don't rush it. Just take your time while doing this and you will get a perfect smoky dress. So I'll just go ahead to follow that line, and afterwards I'm going to show you guys what I have. After I was done, this is what I have for both the front and the back. I'm going to go ahead to give this a good press. This helps the smoky effect more effective. Um, I'll just go ahead to press this on a low heat. The next thing I'm going to do is to pin this on both sides. Then I'll also go ahead to retake the measurement. I'm going to place this on 8 and also get the actual measurement. And what I have now is 23. The smoky effect has shrunk this to 23. The initial was 24. And I also go ahead to stitch on those ends by the side. I'm going to stitch with half inch. And this is what I have. Do well to test it at this point. If you're not comfortable, you can also go ahead to shape more. So I'm going to also go ahead to create the down part of the top. I've already folded my fabric in 2 places. The next thing I'm going to do is to take my hip measurement and I'm going to add extra 5 inch to the measurement like you see. So this I'm going to be cutting a round measurement for both the front and the back of my skirt. So I also went in to mark half inch on that end. I'll be joining to the top part. The next thing I'm going to do is from that 23, I'm going to take the measurement that I want my down dress to stop. So for this dress I want it to stop at 44, but I'm going to go ahead to mark on the lining 40. So I'm marking this at 40. I'm going to also go ahead to connect those lines. So like I said, if you are working with your lining piece, you can just remove 3 to 4 inches from the actual measurements that you need your top. So me, I'm going to be taking off 4 inches from the actual measurement and I'm going to go ahead to cut this out. I'll go ahead to mark half inch. This will be the joining allowance. The other half inch that we created will be the folding allowance. So I'll also go ahead to mark 5 inches. This will be for the second layer. The joining will be for the first layer and I'm going to mark 11 inches and that will be for the third layer. Mind you, this will be on 3 layers. So we're going to start with the waist and 5 inches and the other one is 11 inches. So I'll just go ahead to mark these lines on my lining piece and these marks are on the front part of my lining piece. Why? Because I'm going to be sewing this on the front part. So I'm just going to try as much as possible to distribute this line round. I'm going to distribute it round on the lining piece. So we're going to just follow the line in order to attach panels. So just watch as I do this. It's quite easy. I have limited space and I'm just trying to work with the space that I have. But if you have much space, you can just go ahead to spread this and use your ruler to connect the lines like I'm doing here. After I was done, this is what I have, and this line was distributed round. So I'll go ahead to work with the layers. So for the first layer, I'm going to be cutting on 8 inches, and as you can see, I marked 8 inches on a 45 length because Ankara is 45. I'm marking it on a 45 length, and this I folded my fabric in 2 places because I have limited space. The next thing I'm going to do is to mark this round, and I'm going to be cutting 4 pieces of this. I'm going to mark this line, and I'm going to cut 4 pieces of this for the first layer. Why? Because we're going to be gathering this first stitch. I'm also going to follow the same method in cutting the second and the third layers. I've gone ahead to cut all my piece out, and for the first stage, like I said, we have 8 inches, and I cut 4 pieces of this by 45, and I've gone ahead to join these together, and they are all in one piece. The second layer is 9 inches by 45, and I have 3 pieces of that, and I'm going to set this aside. So for the last piece, I have 11 inches. So also I cut this in 3 pieces, so by 45, and I've gone ahead to join the piece together. So what you have to do is to also do the same, join those pieces together, right side facing each other. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fold with half inch and further fold with half inch, and I'm going to sew round on the 4 layers, and I'll show you guys what we have after I was done with the stitches. So I've also gone ahead to stitch all this round on the 3 layers. This is what I have literally, and for this first stage, the African print is still there. I have a detailed video on how you can take this out. I'm going to link the video on the description box, so do wait to check it out if you don't know how. I'll be working on the third layer. I'll just divide my lining in 4 places, and I'll be using this chalk to divide it. So I'll also do the same like we did on the lining piece on the actual fabric. I want to divide, like distribute it evenly. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing right now. So I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to mark chalk on that midpoint, and I'm going to also go ahead to place this on the lining piece. So this is me trying to distribute this evenly to the lining piece. So I also go ahead to pin this round. Following where we marked the chalk, I'm going to go ahead to pin this down to my lining piece, and I'm going to be facing it front. Like you see, I'm not facing it the other way, I'm facing it front. You understand what I mean when we want to stitch this. I'll go ahead to mark 1 inch on the startup line. I'm not going to be stitching that part, so don't stitch that part, just leave that space. I also go ahead to pleat. So this is me trying to distribute that pleat on that line, and mind you, my fabric is right side facing with my lining piece. I'm going to be pleating till I'm comfortable with the distribution. I will also go ahead to stitch that. But if I'm not comfortable, like if I feel like the space that I'm giving is too small, I'll just readjust till I get the whole fabric distributed on that line. As you can see, I have limited space now, so I'm just going to also go ahead to start pleating again. And what do I mean by that? I'm going to also pin this down. I will also go ahead to take that pin off. That is why I marked that chalk that I marked initially. This will help me work with the space that I have, at least to know when I have my limit. So what I'm going to do is to take off some of this pin and try to distribute that evenly on both sides. And when I'm done, I'll go and sew a stretch stitch on the whole line, following the line that we marked initially. I'll just sew a stretch stitch. So also do the same if you're following along on this method. And I also have a video, like lots of video on pleats skirts. So if you want to know how you can create a pleat skirt, do where to check those videos at. And I will also go ahead to keep distributing this, and at this point I'm comfortable with what we have at this point. I'm also going to do the same like what we did here. I also do the same thing to the other side of my fabric, and also with the straight stitch. And I'm going to show you guys what we have after I was done. This is what it's meant to look. I've already gone ahead to stitch that round, and I left 1 inch space on both sides. Why? Because we're going to be joining that piece round with that 1 inch space. So like we did for the third layer, we're going to do the same thing to the second layer. I'm going to go ahead to mark those points. So let's just call it those guidelines that will guide us through on how we can distribute our pleats, because this is quite big, it's not small, so we're going to need those lines to guide us through. So I'm going to mark this round, and I also do the same thing on my African print. I'm going to divide that line in 2 places like you see me doing. I'll fold and further fold again, and I'm going to also go ahead to mark chalk on where we need to distribute on the lining. After I was done pinning down the fabric to the lining piece following the chalk that we marked, I also go ahead to pleat. And if you're pleating based on how we pleat earlier, I'm going to also follow the same method. So what I'm trying to say is that if you're pleating from the right for the first stage, I would advise you do the same thing, pleat from the right. So I'm pleating from the right side, and I'm also following the same way to pleat for the second layer, as you can see me doing. I'm going to distribute this, and this is what I have. So the both layers are aligned together with the same way of pleating. So I also do the same thing like we did for this other part. I'm going to mark and distribute the chalk like we did for the first and the second layer. I'm going to mark the chalk on the last layer. So for the last layer, because the fabric is much more bigger than the first and second layer, I'm going to be dividing this by 8. So as you can see, I fold my fabric in 2 places and further fold again in 2 places. So we have like 8 panel. I'm going to also mark like we marked at the first layer. So that means I'm going to be distributing this in 8 panel. After I was done with the markings, I'm going to go ahead with my sewing machine and sew with a loose stitch. So this is me trying to gather those loose stitch that we sewed. I'm just going to gather it till I'm sure that I'm comfortable with what I have. Like I'm using my eyes to eyeball if it's enough to contain the upper layer of the lining piece. So this is me trying to also go ahead to make that chalk visible so we can connect it on the lining piece. And like I said, I'm going to also do the same thing to the lining piece. I'm going to divide this into, we had this in 4 layers, so because we did the other one in 8 layers, I'm also going to distribute this by 8. So in between the layers, I'm dividing it in 2 places. And I also go ahead to pin this down, and at this point I'm not going to be pinning the right sides facing each other. Rather, the right side of my lining piece will be facing the left side of my main fabric, as you can see, because I'm not going to be turning it afterwards. So this is me trying to follow through the marks that I have. I'm going to place it like so, and I'm just going to go ahead to pin this down, and I'll go ahead to take this on to my sewing machine and sew, leaving 1 inch on both sides of the edge. I'll just also go ahead to gather this as you can see me doing. I'm trying to make sure that this is gathered on the lining piece, and I'm going to also leave 1 inch like we did on the both pleats. So this is me trying to gather this, and the next thing I'm going to do is to arrange it so it will be evenly distributed on both sides, and I'm going to stitch leaving the 1 inch allowance. So from that 1 inch allowance that I left, I'm going to go ahead to cover that piece with that 1 inch allowance that we gave. I'll also go ahead to pin this down, and I'll take it to my sewing machine, and I'm going to sew a straight stitch. So go ahead and do the same if you're following along in this method. Next off, I'm going to join the piece right side facing each other, and I'll be stitching by 1/2 inch. So for the first layer, I'm going to go ahead to sew a straight stitch like you see me doing in this video. I'll also do the same thing to the second layer. I'm going to join the right side facing each other like you see me doing, and I'm going to also go ahead to sew with a straight stitch. I'll also do the same thing for the third layer. The remaining piece, I'm going to try as much as possible to gather it on that first layer, and I also do the same thing for the other layer. I'm going to open up that second layer. As you can see, there's a bit of space there. I'm going to also go ahead to pleat a little on that area and sew with a straight stitch. I also do the same thing for the last layer. So this is what I have after I was done. This is neatly done. If you're following along with this method, you should have something like this. I've gone ahead to hem the lining piece, and this is the inner part of my dress. I'm going to go ahead to fold this into places and mark chalk on that end. So we're going to join with the upper piece, and also further fold again. So we just distribute this evenly like we did while pleating and gathering of the skirt. So I've gone ahead to mark on 4 points of the dress, the down part of my dress. I also do the same thing that I did to the top part of my dress. I'm going to follow the joining piece as this line. So I'm going to just go ahead to divide this in 2 pieces, and I'm going to mark a chalk on that end. I'm just going to go ahead to mark a chalk on that end on both sides, and I'm going to use my pin to pin this down. Mind you, I flipped my skates on the back, and what I did was just to make sure that the right side is facing the right side of my top, and I pinned that edge as you can see for the side, and with the help of the chalk, this is the midpoint of, or will I call it the center point of my skate. I also go ahead to pin those parts, both the center front and the back midpoint. I'm going to pin it down like so, and I'm just going to go ahead to drag this while stitching. I'll take you guys to my sewing machine and show you how we're going to join this together. So this is how you do it. You just have to distribute it evenly round till you get to the end part of your fabric. In creating of the band that will sit on the top part, I have here 5 inches by any length of your choice. So what I need to do is when I'm done folding, I'm going to sew with 1/2 inch, so we'll be left with 2 inches. For the length of my strap, I have 44, and I'm going to cut in 2 places. I have 44 in 2 places. So I'll just go ahead to sew this and show you guys what we have after I was done. At this point, if you're yet to subscribe to my channel, please do it to subscribe to my channel and follow me for more video like this. And if you like this dress, please do it to give me a thumbs up and share this video to someone that you think that will find this video interesting. The next thing that we'll do in order to fix our strap is to mark in 2.5 and place your strap there. I'm going to place it on that 2.5 inches, and I'm going to go ahead to pin down, and I'm going to show you guys a method that you will neatly fit your strap on your dress. What you need to do is just to pin this down, and when you get to the back part of the dress, fold this inside like so, and also pin that part down. And what you're going to do is to sew it a straight stitch on that end, and you will do the same thing for the second strap. And that's it for this video. Please leave a comment, and I'll see you guys on my next one. Bye guys.